friends, it's Ian from B.T.O here. Welcome to live album ranking on a Friday in the dark again. It's just too dark to have no lights on. One day we might go back to having natural light. So today we're going to have a look at Canadian rock band Bachman Turner Overdrive, a band that was founded by three brothers in Winnipeg, Randy, Robbie and Tim Bachman, along with Fred Turner back in '73. Had a very successful career. 7 top 40 albums, 5 in the US and 11 top 40 singles in the singles in Canada. They've sold worldwide 30 million albums, and they've produced 4 live albums. Now, the 4 live albums, there's a lot of fading out in and all sorts, but it doesn't really spoil it, although I'm not a big fan of fading out live albums, but they're all pretty decent. So, coming in at number 4 is the King Biscuit Flower Hour Bachman Turner Overdrive. Now the King Biscuit Flower Hour had done quite a few bands, and this one was recorded in Chicago in 1974. That was originally broadcast on the radio. So playing on here, we've got Randy Bachman on lead guitar and lead vocals, C.F. Turner on the bass and lead vocals, Tim Bachman second lead guitar, backing vocals, and Robbie Bachman on the drums. So the first 2 tracks come from the second album. I'm going to revert to it as it's always a mouthful to say. So it's B.T.O 2, and the tracks that they have do live on here is a great version of Let It Ride and Give It Time. Excellent tracks. Then we go to the Not Fragile album for a bit of Roll On Down the Highway. Really good version. What I like about this is the original lineup, and they really do a decent version of that. Then we get a thing from B.T.O 2 again. The next 2 tracks come from that album, and it's Welcome Home, great track, really good live. And then the classic Taking Care of Business, which is great on here. Now then they do a thing called Slow Down Boogie. Now I'm not quite sure what studio album this is on, because I couldn't find any information. It all keep going back to live albums, but it's pretty good. It's a nice, as it is, says does what it on the tin. It's a slow boogie down boogie. And then we get this alternative version of a bonus studio track of You Ain't Seen Nothing Left yet. It could be a demo, but it hasn't got the same grunt, but it's quite good. Then there's an interview on here talking about the early days. Now, it's an interview conducted via telephone, and you just can't really hear what's going on. I've listened to it under the headphones just to have a listen, and it's a great conversation, but you have to really, really concentrate. On the whole, it's not a bad listen. There's not many recordings of this lineup around officially, but it is a little groggy in places because it's a radio broadcast back in the 70s. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 3. Now this is one of them albums that's been released twice, different names. It first came out in 1986 as Live, 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 and then reissued in 1990 as All Time Greatest Hits Live. And this was recorded in 1985 at the Moon in Tallahassee on the 1st of August. The band was Randy Bachman on vocals and guitar lead, Tim Bachman on rhythm and vocals, C.F. Turner on vocals, Gary Peterson on the drums, and Billy Chapman on the piano. So, first track is a track called Hey You, pretty cool. Then they do a cover of Mississippi Queen Mountain song. Great band, Mountain. Been fortunate to see the great band, and they are brilliant. Then we go to Not Fragile for Sledgehammer, which is a killer track off that album. Now the next track is called Fragile Mountain. Now this was from a compilation greatest hits album called Trial by Fire, greatest and latest. And like most bands, they put a brand new track, and this was the track. And it is a pretty good track. It's got some nice guitar work, great vocal, absolutely killer vocal. Then we have a track called Bad News Travels Fast. Going, where have we heard that? Well, it's actually on the soundtrack to Body Slam. Then we have two classics from Not Fragile. You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, of course, and Roll Down the Highway. Then we go back to the B.T.O 2 album for Taking Care of Business. It's not a bad live album. Lots of fading out. I'm not sure if it's the right running order, but it doesn't matter because the playing is excellent. So I'm going to give that an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 2. It's called The Best of Bachman Turner Overdrive. Made from the same recorded from the same concert in 1985 in Tallahassee. It was released in 1994, and it's the same concert, but apart from one song, it's different songs from that gig, which is pretty cool. So it's the same lineup as the previous album: Randy, Tim, Gary, and Fred and Billy. The only track they've repeated is from B.T.O 2. That's Taking Care of Business, which is pretty good. Then we go to the debut B.T.O, and two great tracks off that album. We got Blue Collar, which cranks up some great guitar work on that. Give Me Your Money Please, one of my favourite tracks off that album, and it sounds even better, Love. And then we dive back into the past of Gary Peterson and Randy Bachman, because of course Gary was a member of the Guess Who, and they do a really good version of American Woman. Absolutely brilliant version of it. So that's great having on there. Then we go to the Not Fragile album for a little bit of Rock Is My Life and This Is My Song, which I love. It's absolutely killer. Then we go even further back into Randy Bachman's history. It's Shaking All Over, which appeared on, I think, the very first Chad Allen and the Expressions album. It's a good little version of that. Then we get to the Four Wheel Drive album, which was a little bit limp-wristed, I think, to be quite honest. But Four Wheel Drive Live is fantastic. It really beefs it up. Then another track that comes off the B.T.O 1984 album, For the Weekend. Again, it's got lots of that on the album. It's very smooth. But live, it's got a little bit more grunt, and it's not a bad track. I'm not a great fan of it on the album, but I do like that. Then we go back to the Not Fragile album for a little bit of Not Fragile. Excellent. And this one ends from another track from the B.T.O 2 album, Let It Ride. Okay, the sounding is the same, but it's good. Apart from that, doing Taking Care of Business, different tracks, and one of the best tracks on here is American Woman. Absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.5. But my number one album, and it's probably the best sounding album, it's very raw as well, and it's B.T.O Japan Tour Live 19. It came out in 1977. It was recorded at the Nippon Budokan in Tokyo in 1976. And on here we've got vocals Randy Bachman and guitar, drums Rob Bachman, backing vocal and guitar Blair Thornton, and bass of course C.F. Turner. First track on here is another great track from Not Fragile, and I love this track. It doesn't matter how many times I hear it. Roll On Down the Highway. Just love them riffs in that track. Then we go into the debut album, B.T.O, for Hold Back the Water. Really raunchy and gutsy version of that. Then we go to number 2 for Welcome Home, which is a brilliant track, and it's probably the best version on I've got live. Then we go back to the debut for B.T.O. and Don't Get Yourself in Trouble. Brilliant. Then another cranking version of Four Wheel Drive. We're going to take care of business as well while we're at that end of the gig, and that's another great version. Then we have that Slow Down Boogie and this Thank You Domo, which again I don't know when but they do really cracking tracks. It's a very, very solid live album. It's a little bit groggy in places, but I don't mind that. It's hard, it's heavy, it's raunchy, it's raw, and the Japanese crowd seem to be enjoying it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. So there we go. There's a little bit of B.T.O. on a Friday morning. Coming up next is a one-off album review, and this is an album that about 4 or 5 months ago, I come across it purely by accident, and it's called The Sea Hags by the Sea Hags. So join me for that and find out how I discovered it. Bye for now.